this. Just get it in there. I know what you're thinking. This is exactly what it looks like. After the somewhat okay video game in All For One, and the total abomination that is Full Frontal Assault, Insomniac finally realized how much smokes they were taking and understood what fans were asking. All they wanted was some good old-fashioned platforming with fun and over-the-top weapons to use. And 1 year later, the developers released Ratchet Clank Into the Nexus. Or in Australia, Ratchet Clank Nexus. Seriously, what is up with the name changes? Well, I don't know why, but it's so good that everything is going back to normal. But did you know that this game ties into the future series? I know, I was a little bit shocked as well. They didn't have to continue the story going forward because it was already perfect, in my eyes at least. But now, with the addition of Into the Nexus plotted in, my opinion on the Ratchet & Clank future series could perhaps change. Or will it remain the same? Well, let's not stand around waiting for an answer and jump into Ratchet & Clank Into the Nexus. A few years go by after the events of a Kraken... Shut up, bird! A few years go by after the events of A Crack in Time, we start with Ratchet & Clank escorting a dangerous criminal in Vendra Prague. Everything's running smoothly until her twin brother, Neftin Prague, along with Thugs for Less, takes over the ship and Vendra is free. They set explosives around the ship, blowing it up, killing Kronk and Zephyr in the process while our heroes watched as they were sucked out of the ship. Later on in the story, they realize that the Progs are trying to bring the Nethers into the galaxy. And of course, it's up to Ratchet & Clank to stop the Progs and the invasion of the Nethers.
Fire Omni rockets on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
The story is okay, but comparing it to Full Frontal Assault is a masterpiece, let me tell you. However, there are some questions I had in my mind while playing through Into the Nexus. We're told by the returning Talwyn about Vendra Prague being a cold and empty person. They try to treat her as a huge threat, but to me, I don't really see her as an interesting villain. The way how she's presented, it feels like I should know this character, but this is my first time seeing her. And overall, she doesn't really have a big personality comparing to Dr. Nefarious or Percival Tachyon. Emperor! Okay, fine! Emperor Percival Tachyon, I thought we'd gone over that joke. And plus, she constantly mentions about Ratchet being the last of his race. There's no need to go over it again, but I guess that's one of the ways to get people understanding that this game is a part of the future series. And speaking of characters, I wish that Talwyn could have gotten more screen time instead of messaging Ratchet a couple of times. Maybe they could have pushed the relationship between Ratchet and Talwyn even further. But other than that, I really like the opening of this game. It's paced pretty well, and the graphics look gorgeous. I would say that Into the Nexus is perhaps the best good looking game on the PlayStation 3 system. Even if it is stuck on 30 frames per second, but it's not that big of a deal. The designs for Ratchet & Clank are better this time around, as Ratchet looks more natural. But Quark on the other hand still looks off and pretty ugly looking, but thank God he only appears once. And also, thank God I'm happy to say that the gameplay is good once again. No more dumb AI and no more balloon tower defense. Just some fun Ratchet & Clank gameplay that you know and love. Platforming, collecting gold bolts, and using some fun weapons. The weapons lineup is also good and features some satisfying weapons to use. The Omni Blaster, Fusion Grenade, Temporal Repulsor, and the Nether Blades to name a few. Mr. Zircon is here as always, but in Into the Nexus, when you fully upgrade Zircon, he'll appear with his family. I know I'm not a fan of Mr. Zircon, but seeing little Zircon talking about killing his enemies, is so goddamn cute.
Little Zircon does not need bolts. He is given an allowance of carnage.
Speaking of upgrading a weapon, I love the way how you can upgrade your weapon to make it even more deadly. By using Raritanium, you can purchase upgrades like more ammo, increasing more bolts, and increasing more Raritanium. It all works in a chain, and when you buy all the upgrades surrounding a question mark, you'll unlock a mystery upgrade, which makes me even more keen to upgrade every weapon just to see what's inside the mysterious perk. Like every other Ratchet & Clank game, there has to be a Clank level. And Insomniac, they nailed the Clank gameplay. It's not overused or overcomplicated. The gameplay for Clank is simple, straightforward, and short, which is something that they should have done from the start. If we can't have the Clank gameplay from a crack in time, then this is a good substitute. I've pretty much gone on and on saying how good Into the Nexus is, but we are over halfway into this review, and trust me, I'm not finished yet. The designs look pretty well and nicely created, but the problem I have with them is the amount of levels. There are only 5 levels in the entire game. One of them includes a battle arena level and a collectathon sandbox level. You usually spend at least 30 to 45 minutes in each level. And with that said, this game can be short if you decide to not collect everything like I did, as it took me 2.5 to 3 hours to complete. It's not as short as Quest for Booty, but definitely small in comparison to the other Ratchet & Clank titles out there. The soundtrack sounds nice to the ear at times, but I wouldn't say anything that's memorable or revolutionary about the OST. The hover boots make their return here, and it's weird. It's mostly to do with the placements of the ramps. It's hard to move around in one go, and at times you will have to adjust yourself just to get the angle right. And here's a small nitpick that did bother me, and that was the way how Ratchet walked when he turned to Bolt Crank. It doesn't look like he's walking, as it looks more like he's slipping on ice or dancing around. A cool thing about Into the Nexus is this section where you can visit the museum. In there, you can look at the past history of everything Ratchet & Clank did together as partners. Although seeing Stuart Zerko in the same room as Dr. Nefarious and Chairman Drek is a crime that cannot go unpunished. Is there anything out there that is much more worse than Stuart Zerko?
Howdy, friend. Fancy seeing you all the way out here in the Zarkov sector.
Oh no. Well, he can be debatable. I guess when it comes to the future series, I was going to expect this guy showing up. But hey, it's fine, it's no big deal. We only see him for a few minutes, so whatever.
Hey, see, my bird and I got into an argument about the division of profits. I don't suppose you'd help me look for him, would you?
Sure, I'd be happy to look for him. For a few bolts.
Oh, you're real funny, Ratchet! I wouldn't end this review without talking about the final boss. The final boss in this game is Mr. I, the leader of the Nethers. It's an interesting boss battle, but the thing is, Mr. I doesn't feel like a final boss. He's more like the boss at the end of the first act before the story evolves into something more. Now that I think about it, the story is pretty underwhelming at times. I don't know if it has to do with the game being made in 1 year, or if the writers were suffered from making a couple of spin-off games. Mr. I does take a while to beat, as there are at times where you switch from playing as Ratchet to Clank, and the weapons does take some time to bring his health bar back to 0. But other than that, the boss fight is okay. So Mr. I gets defeated, Ratchet teases a relationship with Talwyn, and the game ends. So does the future series. Well, hopefully. If you compare this game to other Ratchet & Clank games, it can feel like a DLC game or something. But, comparing it to the more recent games like All for One and Full Frontal Assault, this is the definition of a work of genius. While it's not the best Ratchet & Clank game, I do see it as an underrated video game. Sure, the game is short and the story should have gotten more time to work on, but really, All you need is some good gameplay. The game looks nice, the weapons are fun to use, and it's cool to upgrade them. If you are looking for a Ratchet & Clank game to kill a few hours from start to finish, I recommend checking out Into the Nexus. And as for the future series as a whole, my opinion still stands for the series being above average. While this game may not be special in some people's eyes, but it's so good to see that Insomniac has now gotten back to their old roots. It felt like it was only yesterday when I first started to cover the Ratchet & Clank series. And now, with all the anticipation and all the waiting, we finally get to finish off the series with one more Ratchet & Clank game. But until then, thank you for watching this review, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, share the video, and subscribe today. My name's Cheese and Crackers, telling you to keep calm and keep playing video games.